do a little opening for the recording. So welcome everyone to Love in Action today in fourth Tuesday of April. I hope it's becoming spring, or Judy, where you are, autumn,
Yeah,
wherever you
getting
are.
colder.
It's been a long winter here. We have Peter coming in. Um, I thought I would maybe invite everyone to share a little bit today and talk a little bit, just talk a little bit up front about the purpose of the group and why we're here and what our hopes are. And that's going to be different for everyone. So I think part of what we'd like to hear is what that is for you. And so when we started this group to support people and try to create some community around those who are interested in the principles or perhaps another transformational understanding, but most people who come on here are familiar with the three principles, to provide a space for people to connect. And just to me, that is really valuable. Just having some connection. And along with that is, support for how you see yourself in the world, sharing, and how you experience that. And if it could be said that we had a goal in this, it would be that everyone who participates finds their way to feeling, a sense of fulfillment in their sharing. Perhaps a sense of joy and ease, no matter where you are, whether you're a full-time coach, teacher, practitioner, or you're just interested and you feel like you share this in your life. And so that's kind of where I like to start and kind of check in with people, and just so any of those questions, where you feel like you're at in your journey in terms of sharing, what maybe you're looking for, what are you finding joy in, um any of those questions, or maybe there's an alternate question. But I thought maybe we just go around and open with people just sharing a little bit about where they're at, what they're looking for, what they have been finding. So
We're all chomping at the bit here.
yeah, that's great. That can be good. Silence can be golden.
That's true. Well, I think this is my first Love in Action call. So I'm here as an explorer. I've kind of heard of the three principles pretty much just from you and Stephanie in the past calls, but I'm really not that familiar with it. And so, but I understand that it's good stuff. So I'm here just coming to receive what's here, participate with it, see, yeah, just discover.
Yeah, those are all great. I think um the exploring and the discovering is kind of built into this, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of the magic happens. So you're so welcome to be here. I know we've seen you in other calls, so glad that you're here, Sam.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? Just anything about the community of sharers of the principles of transformation, where you are, where you feel like maybe you fit in or want to be in all this.
So I'm here for support and connection. I've been around the principles a while, and the primary way I share is my involvement with the Heartfelt Presence Zoom room, and also just as I go about my life, I
Mhm.
feel like I sort of go about scattering seeds. Any opportunity that I have to, drop something into the conversation, I normally would. And the reason I come to these kind of calls when I can, and I can't always because they're often really early New Zealand time, it just is really helpful to be around other people that, in that loving presence. I sort of feel it's nurturing, and I go away and feel more loving, and I usually find I'm being more loving afterwards.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's why I come.
Oh, great, great. And I love what you said about planting seeds, because I think if we reflect on just for a moment, whether we're three principals, coaches, teachers, or not, we can all maybe think of times where, so at some point in the course of our lives, we planted a little seed with someone. And sometimes that can be as simple as offering a smile to someone. Right. Right. I remember this was like way before I had heard about the three principles. I was living in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul at the time, and getting out of the airport just before a blizzard was due to come. And I was going to the southwest part of the country, the desert, for a little vacation from winter in Minnesota. And as occasionally happens, things happen with flights, and the flight got canceled, and they were rebooking on to the next flight. So if you've ever been in this situation, this whole mass of people get up and go over to the next line to hopefully get on the airplane. And especially when a blizzard's coming, it can mess with you a little bit. And I remember, for some reason, I often get very panicked or just stirred up in situations like that. I mean, I can get stirred up if the grocery line is taking too long sometimes. So imagine, being in this situation. But for some reason, I really dropped into this feeling of calmness, and just knowing, I'm in line, what's going to happen is going to happen. And, in a very, very different state of mind. And the guy in front of me turned around. Now, he was not even like looking at me, reading my body language. This guy in front of me turned around and said, I just want to thank you. I was kind of a little puzzled. And he said, I want to thank you for your calm presence. It's really helping me right now. And, that's an example. I think we all probably could think of situations like that in our lives. And so when I think in terms of, the name of this group, the Love in Action, it encompasses whatever we might be doing formally in terms of teaching or sharing, but it definitely applies to just as we go about our lives. So I appreciate your using that phrase, Judy, about planting seeds. So how about you, Peter? Anything you want to share?
The first, Judy, could you name more slowly? You're involved with some kind of prison ministry?
No, it's a group called Heartfelt Presence.
Oh, Heartfelt Presence. Oh, that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not Heartfelt Prisons. Oh, yeah. Oh, I know that one. That's great. Great. Who do you? My good friend Dave Nichols is there.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you know there as well? Yeah.
Probably a lot of people, because I've been part of it from the get-go.
Oh, great.
Yeah. There was a previous group, In Search of a Peaceful Mind, and Xander is involved with it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and if anyone else
And
has,
Tom,
yeah,
you've
a little bit. So
Yeah.
Judy, for anyone who might not know what heartfelt presence, either here or listening to the recording, can you just give a little explanation?
It's basically well, the goal is for it to be a 24/7 Zoom room where people can just drop in for support, for companionship, connection.
Mm-hmm.
And every session is a little different. It depends on who turns up. And our job as host is to well, we have so much freedom actually, because we can host in any way that we want to. And I love that about it, because I kind of think that the right people will find the right people, if that makes sense. We go to a few different rooms and we find who we enjoy connecting with, and the conversation will go where it goes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a beautiful. I did want to also say, Tom, that I am keen to do a lot more than I'm doing.
Okay.
But there's a little part of me that holds myself back, particularly in relation to charging money. I'm
Right.
so good at
Right.
offering my services, for free, basically.
Yeah.
And I noticed too that pretty much everything I do is online. I've sort of built my little community of people that I, have conversations with or whatever. And I see that there's a wee bit of a reluctance for me to put my hand up locally.
Yeah.
Where people that have known me, or we've lived in the small country town that we live in for probably 35 years. For me to put my hand up and say, here I am, this is what I do, that feels a little hard. So that's another reason that I've joined you.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you put those things out on the table, because I think a lot of people who've come across the principles who've wanted to share run into some of those same things. And so I'm so glad that you brought those up. And ultimately, Steph and I, our vision for this group is to support people so that they do share in the way that they want to share, and that they find it fulfilling, which means both personally fulfilling, and then if you're doing it as work, it would be financially fulfilling. And the things you're talking about are things that a lot of us, including me, by the way, have come up against. So I'm so glad you put those out onto the table, and maybe there'll be some threads that we can follow after we've given people a chance to share. But I also just want to say hi to Bruce, who's joined us. And Bruce, basically, we're just doing a little reflection on, our being here together, a little bit about, what our intention is as both individuals and groups, and how we started this group as a way to bring people together to find, connection and support in whatever individuals are up to or want to be up to. And so we've had a few people share on that, and anyone else who wants to now jump in and pretty much say anything you want.
Yeah, I'll take that as an invite. I was just finishing a run in the hood here, and the three principles I'm kind of taking back off the shelf. I was introduced in the mid 80s, and that was in Minneapolis when Joe Bailey, Chris Heath, and Keith Blevins were all together at the Minneapolis Institute. And I did get down to Tampa and spend some time with Rick Suarez. And so I found it extremely meaningful. And now I'm just revisiting and kind of re-immersing myself and seeing so many other authors and contributors that it's refreshing. So opportunities like this to dialogue and be in a room, so to speak, and I appreciate sharing the other room that's available, and I'll check that out, is just a way to keep it alive. I'm looking forward to Sunday when they premiere the video that Chris and Shane are hosting. And, you know, I love the simplicity and the genuineness and being fully present for people and with people and not getting caught up in stories and a lot of convoluted approaches to uprighting the ship, so to speak. So the bottom line is 3 principles have been good to me, been meaningful, and I'm glad to be back in the stream, so to speak. Thanks.
Yeah, well, we're so glad to have you. I'm kind of curious something, Bruce. You know, you talked about the 1980s and hearing, you know, Joe Bailey and Christine and others at that time. That was before, correct me if I'm wrong, that was before the understanding was kind of really formally called the 3 principles. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was some psychology of mind, was one term. People had different ways of approaching it because, you know, people were going up to Salt Spring to learn, and the majority of them were psychologists, except Bill Pettit, who was a psychiatrist. And, you know, it's like, how do you land the message in common vernacular without getting too woo-woo or
Right.
too, you know, out there? And so, you know, and I think it's still because healthcare, which I was in a different version for decades, you know, you've got to come up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan,
Right.
because that's the way you get reimbursed.
Right.
And so, how do you make this work for people? And everybody always wants to put it in a box. You know, give me the cliff notes, explain it to me. What do you mean and all this? And so it took it away from the feeling aspect and got, I think, a little heady at times, just trying to present it to people and keep it available. So there's always that dance of, you know, the feeling versus the objectivity of it, objective and subjective. And so that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I appreciate that because, and I think actually that this is possibly not a small thing for those of us who more recently been around, because for me personally, I sometimes, maybe even often, in terms of talking to people, don't like to specifically talk about 3 principles, or I'm involved in this thing called the 3 principles. And an example of that was I was a couple of weeks ago, I was picking up some friends from the airport, and I had taken care of their household and their dogs and cats. And we were chatting, and I was talking about somehow we got on the subject, and the person, you know, one of the people was really interested. Well, what is this about? Like, how did you meet all these people from all over the world via Zoom? What were you doing? And I talked about this training and that I was in, and finally they were pressing me. I said, well, it's called the 3 principles. And they say, oh, what are the 3 principles? And I said something like, you know, actually, I don't really like to talk about 3 principles specifically. What I like to do is, and so I just talked about what it was in kind of common language. So I didn't even say the 3 principles. You know, I talked about how, you know, ideas and inspirations and things just naturally occur to us, and they're coming from somewhere. Some intelligence is giving them to us, and, you know, we're aware of life. We have the ability to understand what's going on. And then we have all this mental activity, thoughts and daydreams, and, you know, all kinds of, you know, that all those things are going on. And finally the person said, well, what are the 3 principles? So I said, okay, they're mind, consciousness, and thought. You know, but it was kind of interesting because And it's fine. It's fine that we can do this. That I really wanted to, because for me, being in this world of the principles, something really powerful happened to me. And it can't be just explained at all by those three words to me alone. And so I think a lot of people do who are in the kind of where we are sometimes kind of struggle over the language that they use. And
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways for me to understand it early on when I went to Tampa and spent a weekend with Rick Suarez, who wrote the book with Roger Mills and Darlene Stewart, was Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense. And, if you can get a used copy of that book, it really is helpful, because the two big takeaways for me is out of the book and spending time with Rick was we all live in separate realities,
Right.
and that feelings are used as a compass. If we feel something's off, well, follow it back to the north like a compass, and it's up here, what we're thinking.
right.
And those two stuck with me through the years.
Yeah.
And I spent less time trying to convince people about my reality and paying more attention to my feelings. So I didn't go in the ditch as often on issues. And, it's become very helpful. But the reason I got into it initially was going through a divorce and loss of custody and being a single dad with my son across the country, and just trying to figure out all that stuff. And I had already entered the recovery arena and understood family recovery. And then I got in men's work and meditation, and I still live in all those worlds. And now with equine work, with horses, with military vets, first responders, recovery, and mental health, it's that connection piece that we're all seeking. And from the connection, we develop a relationship. And Sid would have said, well, that's the feeling. It certainly is.
Yeah. 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 I appreciate you mentioning that book too. That was that was probably the earliest attempt to write a book about what Sid Banks had taught. And sometime later in the late 80s, I just learned this in the late 80s, there was an author named Richard Carlson who went on to become quite famous in the 90s with the series of books called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. I don't know if any of you have heard of those books. And I didn't read them at the time, like I think it was like the late 90s. And so I was a little surprised after I got into the principles to learn that actually he was a student of Sid's, and he had taken the work that Rick Suarez and Roger Mills had done and kind of wrote it in a more popular version, because that book was a little bit more like a textbook. And so Richard Carlson came out with a book called, I think it's called You Can Be Happy No Matter What. And it was the same thing. So it was before they were talking about formally three principles, but it was the same idea as the same feeling that was behind it. So that was kind of interesting to me when I came across that, because I've often thought with the principles like it's still very much not a lot of people know about it, as far as I can tell. But then I go back and I look at that book. Well, Richard Carlson, I mean, again, I don't think he even talks about Sid Banks in that book, but there it is. It's to me, it's all in that book from 1989, and it's a very accessible book, and I highly recommend it.
And
really
he
good.
wrote a book with Joe Bailey too.
Yeah.
So that kind of sealed the deal that Sid was an influence. But I know Joe, and I've met Richard, and, unfortunately we lost him, but that's what it takes sometimes, is a more self-help or, buzzwords to get people's attention and get into their heads. If you get into mind, thought, and consciousness, they start to woo out, or, I'm going to be at a Zen retreat or something like that. And, just short little things that hook people in, and then you can reel them in. And then when they get the feeling, then that's their aha or their insight.
Right. And also to me, so part of what that is for all of us, it's both, I would say, giving us permission and an invitation to share with people, just being ourselves, using our words, even if like Sam said, she wasn't knew all that much about the principles, but yet she has her own wisdom, as we all do. We all have wisdom, and we all have a desire to, I think, to be a good person in the world, which means, sharing ourselves, even if that's non-verbally as we go about our lives. So it's really permission and an invitation. Well, what is this for you, really? What is this for you, and how does it feel best for you to communicate it? So one of the things that was interesting about that little dialogue I had with my friends as we were coming back at the airport, and I was kind of resisting talking about the three principles, but she was persistent, right? Which was fine too. It was kind of like a nice encounter. But I was really sharing with them what had changed for me, and how, I don't suffer from my thoughts for as long a time as I used to. And what had happened, as a good example, when I went to pick them up at the airport and I got into their car, I had realized I left at one point during the week, I left the doors unlocked. So when I got into the car to go to the airport, I noticed right away, oh my gosh, someone's been in the car. We have a lot of theft here in the Portland area, especially with cars. And if you leave your car unlocked, someone's going to get into it, basically. Fortunately, there wasn't much in there, but I had this moment, oh my God, like, I've let my friends down. I left the car open. They're going to be mad. But very quickly, as I was pulling out of the driveway, I was like, no, it's going to be fine. Like, nothing happened. They're going to understand. They've probably done it themselves. Where in the past, I might have gotten really caught up in that the whole time I was going to the airport. And who knows, maybe gotten into an accident because I wasn't paying attention because I was so upset. And so I was sharing a little bit about that. Like, that's a really practical effect of being in this understanding, is when things happen, they seem to have, what I would call negative things or upsetting things. They seem to have a really short shelf life, and I get over them quickly. Well, one of the things that was really interesting to me is I've often said to myself, in terms of sharing, like, I think I can share this with people who maybe are already interested, was number one, or, other adults. But I thought, wow, it would be really hard. This is me, hard to talk about this to teenagers. And some other people have similar things. Other people love to talk to teenagers. Well, what was really interesting was the friends that I had picked up, there were two teenagers in the car. And as we started talking about, my experience in the principles, they were involved together, looking at something on Instagram, laughing, chatting, right? Well, as we got deeper into the conversation, I noticed it got very quiet back there. And the two girls were, I couldn't see them, but I could feel them listening. And it's so interesting. So interesting. It was really a strong feeling that they got very quiet. And when we got home, Susan, who was the mother of the children, took me aside. She said, Tom, I want to tell you something. When you were talking, they were really listening to you. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't see them, but I could feel how quiet they were. And so that's just an example too, maybe. I think sometimes me, especially, we kind of put conditions on what sharing might look like and what we're capable of. Like Judy mentioned, well, I'm fine on Zoom, but putting my hand up in my little community where I know everyone, that's different. And totally relate to that. Or I could say something like, well, I can talk about this to people who who are adults and who say they're interested. But I would be totally lost if you put teenagers in front of me. Well, if you put them behind me in the car and don't talk to them directly, and you never know. Like people hear things. People hear things that, the things that those two girls heard, may have they may, they were listening, and maybe it had an impact on them, maybe they didn't, or maybe they heard something that will absolutely change their lives. Like we never know. So I think for us, in terms of like the conditions we might put on, at least the conditions we put on in our head, that we can question those a little bit, and maybe we can do more than we think we can do. So I'll stop there and give either Peter or Xander a chance to jump in with anything on this topic.
Yeah, keep it short, I'll pay you. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Should I?
Yeah, go ahead, Xander.
All right, okay. Yeah, I come in my usual jocular way. I like to joke, I like to play around. It's something that happened. Used to be so serious. What you've just reminded me. Tom, sorry. I looked at the bottom of the screen. It says Love in Action. Where's your name? Why is your name not there? I forgot
That's my
your
name today.
Right. Yeah, you just reminded me of something there, Tom. And now because of all that, I've forgotten what it was. But going back to your original question, and maybe that will come back. I took a coaching course. I think it was around 2013 or 14. I'm not sure. It might have been as late as 2015 or 16. The thing is, I thought it was later, and I found something recently and realized it was a little earlier, but I don't remember when it was, and it's kind of irrelevant, right? So around about then, I took a coaching course, and I've been trying to be a coach ever since. Like, I finished the course, and I've been trying to start a coaching practice ever since, and I have failed year on year miserably ever since. And that was okay, because I just kept trying, and I kept trying different things. And I started a Facebook group and a page, and there was Living Happy with Xander Glasgow, and there was all sorts of things, right? And at the time, I was doing what everyone else was doing. Right? I was doing the typical coaching thing. I was doing, assertiveness and all sorts of stuff. And then, I had one meeting at the end of, it was 6 months. My wife passed away June 2018, and 6 months later, I found myself in a meeting of the three principals here in Belfast with a group of probably about 20, 25 people. And I'd never heard of the three principles before. I was feeling particularly lonely one Friday night, and I thought to myself, I wonder what's on tomorrow. I'll have a look on a certain website, meetup.com, and I found a local group, Belfast Three Principles, whatever, and I had a look, and I thought, looks interesting. I'll go along, see what it's about. And it hit a chord with me right away. For me, it was dead in line with, I had formed my own from 2012 up until 2018. I had formed my own, because I had trouble with the whole God thing, the higher power thing. I tried, I looked at so many different things, and so I had formed some of my own ideas. And then one day somebody said to me, well, when we were having a discussion, what do you believe? And I described, and he said, well, that's non-duality. I says, is it? He says, yeah. And so I went and I looked, and I says, right, okay, what is that? And I went back to him the following day, and I says, we were meeting on a daily basis at that time, good friend. And I said, that's as close as you're going to get. Well, here we are, years later, years later. I mean, to what I was believing, right? Years later, how many years I don't know. And I'm sitting in that one December, cold Saturday afternoon, Saturday after morning even, and I was listening to this man who was talking on the screen and he was Scottish, so that was a point in the right direction, right? Sorry, but and he was saying things that I understood, but he wasn't saying anything that I'd ever heard before. I understood. I just understood. And I said, in all my wisdom, right, I said to the people who organised it, I said, I understood this before I heard about it, right? Now, how egotistical does that sound, right? But it was true, but it was foolish to voice it. And I've still not started a coaching practice. I mean, I've still not successfully started a coaching practice, but I'm still doing it for free on Facebook twice a month, not it's 4 times a month, once a week, unless it's a 5-week month, that gives me a day off, right? I do it for free. And to me, you know, it doesn't matter if I never make a penny. It really doesn't. I would like to have a successful coaching practice. Yeah. I do. I'm also involved with Heartfelt Presence, which is, it's voluntary, and I enjoy it. And I've never, I've been doing that for just over a year now. It doesn't seem, you know, anyway. And I can honestly say that there has never been a time I'm going on there as a coach, in quotes, right? I don't even call myself a coach anymore, right? I would rather refer to myself as a facilitator. What kind of facilitator? I don't know, right? It's just facilitator, right? Because, and yeah, there's been so many insights since in that time, since 2018. So really, I would say I've been involved with 3 Principles since 2019. The last year, there's never been a time when I've left Heartfelt Presence room. I just finished. I clicked. I finished on Heartfelt Presence, and then the next minute I was in here talking to you guys. Right, that was my session. Just finished, 2-hour session. And if I hadn't been doing this, I would still be in the Heartfelt Presence room, because there's a spare hour when no one's scheduled for that time. What do I want to do? I don't even talk about the three principles, but actually, you know, what I'm going to finish with this, right? Because I'm aware that I should give some time for others. I kind of talk too much. And I talk slowly, and I've got to think about what I'm saying. It's just the way my mind works, and right. And I've always, anyway, see what I mean? Right, it's just, I can't get past myself. I was saying on Sunday that I was with my group on Sunday night, and I was saying to them that I need to take some time off. I need a break. And the reason I need a break, one of the reasons I need a break, is I spent a couple of years, one of the first things I said to the person who was running that Belfast group, I said to him, I'm going to have to take my time here and learn this, because it's a new language, right? 3 Principles community, it's like learning a new language. And on Sunday night, I was saying, I need to find my own way of expressing this. And you touched on that, Tom. And that's where I'm at. I need to find my own way. And I just looked up the name of that book on Amazon, Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense. And I found it there. There's one on sale for almost £200. I don't know what that is in dollars. It's $225 or something, right? There's cheaper versions there as well. But thankfully, I don't know if I would spend $200 or 200 quid on it, right? But I might. It's been recommended. Yeah, I'm at that place. I need to find my own. I was even thinking about joining 3PGC and doing the whole apprentice thing for 2 years. And I thought to myself, you know, if I do that, I'm going to be learning a new language, right? Because they're all sort of, it's a group, it's a community, it's a, you know, and so I find myself sort of at a fork in the road. Do I go into that and become, excuse my terminology, but a clone of 3PGC? Or do I find my own language? And because it's not just about the psychology, it's not just about the spirituality, it's not just about the feeling, it's all of that and more. And that doesn't mean it has to be complicated. And for me to find my own simple way of talking my truth, no, I don't even like that term. I actually don't even like the word spirituality, right? Again, finding my own language. And so that's where I'm at. And I don't know how long it's going to take. And I might never have a successful coaching practice. Who cares? Right? Because there's other work I can do, hopefully. We'll see, because I'm starting something new as well in the sidelines. And maybe that'll be the road I take, whilst I 3 principles my way through the rest of my not professional life, right? And that's okay. So yeah, I don't know what the future holds, whoever's does, but that's where I'm at since you asked, Tom. That's all I'm going to say, and you're muted.
Thanks for sharing all that, Xander. And it's just nice to kind of look at where we see ourselves right now, and maybe some inkling of where we might be going, but we never really know for sure. And just one thing that I also think has been so helpful and unique about being in this world, because even like way back when Sid Banks first started, you know, encouraging, you know, he would give his talks on Salt Spring Island, and he knew some people there already, and they had seen a great change in him. And he would share, and he would encourage people right away to start teaching. And he would just say, you know, be very simple. He said, if you have found something that has helped you, that's it. Share that with other people. And I think that's so down to earth. You know, all of us have found things in our lives, especially, you know, if we're talking more on, let's say, the inner level. You know, we have found some things that have helped us, and we can share those stories with other people, and you know, some people will really be you know, will really benefit from that. And that's, you know, that's one way of looking at this, you know, very simply. So thank you, Xander. And Peter, what's on your mind?
I'm just taking notes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, as Sid said, the more notes you take, the quicker you reach enlightenment. I think he said that a lot. Pretty sure. Just
I don't
kidding.
know. I don't think anyone was taking notes at the time, Peter, so I don't think we can prove that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Gosh, this is yeah, a weird little, you know, prayer I never got around to praying. Like, when the hell is anybody ever going to mention sanity, insanity, and common sense again? Because that was the first book I was pointed to in 2004 by a psychologist who had in the late 80s, he'd gone down to wherever Roger Mills and Rick Suarez were located outside of Miami at the time. And, and my friend David described the training. He said, yeah, they talked to me for about half an hour. And my friend David never tried to describe what they talked about.
Mhm.
He said, and then they said, I had to go out to the beach. You should go out to the beach and relax, David. When you're really relaxed, come back. And that was the training for a week. And in a true enlightenment story, the PhD psychologist does not begin to have a breakthrough until the last afternoon of the last day. And he was relaxed enough and like, oh, I get it. He went back to them, and then he said, because I had asked him, this was the first hour that I'd ever met the guy. He was being introduced to me by friends, and I said, I knew he was a psychologist. I knew he'd run the mental health clinic in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I said, David, what did you do that you either liked to do or that worked? I'm interested in either one. And he started to name it like, I was ready to burn out in the late 80s. I was totally ready to burn out and quit. And I came across this training. It looked really interesting. And I thought, it's either sheer genius or they're insane. And I don't care which, because if they're insane, I was going to quit anyway.
Mhm.
And if they're geniuses, then it may give me a second chance. So he said he whatever he got from that training, he said, I brought it back to the clinic. I taught the staff. And again, all my questions like, what did you teach the staff? You haven't even talked to me about what was going on. But whatever went on, it allowed him to point toward well-being.
Right.
And the staff were able to take that on. And he said, we started to get 90% approval rating, which if anybody knows anything about mental health in the United States of America, that's outrageously good. It's just like really, really good. And then he said, I say this with a little trepidation because I don't want to tread on anybody's boundaries or stories, but he said, and the other thing that really clinched it for him, and as soon as he said it, it clinched it for me. He said, we got a 90% approval rating reliably for the next few years that he still worked there. And then he said, and then there was the number of Cherokee so this is a Native American Indian tribe that still has a reservation in North Carolina and also a pretty large reservation in Oklahoma. So the number of Cherokee who came to me and said, oh, you're just helping us get back to the old ways.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And the other thing I'd add to it is my own path. I say it this way. I am perhaps the most terribly left brain, linear, step-by-step person you will ever meet. I have a pretty good sense of humor, but I'm terribly step-by-step. And I have never been able to make many of the leaps, the glorious global insights that people have. And listening to Sydney never did it for me. But it's been a step-by-step thing, hearing from a number of people, touching into, as it were, the spirits of a number of people. And it took until I began to have a tiny toehold in 2013, and then about 4 years ago, which places it, basically 20, maybe the end of 2018, 2019, was when I reliably began to be able to, in some cases, just literally step outside the door of the office I worked at a community college. I'm a mental health counselor. And reliably just be able to look down at the ground wherever I was standing on grass. And I don't know why, they seemed to be there in practically every season, except when there might be snow on the ground. There were these teeny little flowers. Some of them were lavender and some were white. And I just was touched. I was just kind of astounded. And there was just this little leap of delight.
Hmm.
And that started to show up pretty reliably. And that sense of whatever it is to be in touch with life kind of reliably, to have that kind of hum, that kind of, for me, I would use the word of a very simple yes. Whatever that is, it just started to show up as home. And I didn't get that it was home until my mind started to kind of quiet down, and the whatever level of anxiety that was constantly running through my life all that time got smaller, and then kind of just like disappeared. And my mind got quieter at least from time to time. And if that's the only thing that ever happened, I would have paid good money for that. So I'm just saying, it's been a very gradual process. And then, more confidence and just in the capacity to listen, knowing that my home is different than what I took it for most of my life, which is a fairly kind of painful kind of, I had a fair amount of depression for a lot of my life, and most of my life felt like an act of will. Most things that I did required an act of will rather than any kind of flow. And like, oh crap, it's kind of working more and more. I still know how to get caught up, but but the general framework, the general ground I stand on is, yeah. Boy, I get to begin anew whenever I get bent out of shape. Just dial it back to, well, I guess I'm starting fresh here. And it's a heck of a lot better than the previous, whatever, 60 plus years. It's so much better. God. That's, I would say those kind of things. But thanks so much. I had not, I got a first edition. I was the fool who bought a first edition of Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense. And that was just written by Rick Suarez and Roger Mills. And then, what's her name? Darlene? Yeah, Darlene Stewart, was it? She helped author the second edition. And the other story I would say, this stuff tried to get my attention before I was ready for it. But it knocked on my door so clearly that it was like, you're going to remember that we knocked on your door. We know you're not ready for it, but we need you to know that when it happens, it's really important. And so it was like, a dozen years before I ran into my friend David Lieberman. I was at a bookstore outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was in the self-help psychology section, and I was looking at all sorts of books, and there was this weird book that talked about the new science of happiness. I took it out, looked at it, and said, I'm not ready for this. I'm in the middle of graduate school. I don't think I can stand this. And I got to tell you, if there's one thing I know how to do, if there were only one thing on this planet I knew how to do, I know how to reshelve a book. I stuck that book back in the bookshelf and I looked at something else, and it managed to fall out on my feet. And I picked it up a second time. I looked at it a second time. Not ready for this. And I reshelved it. And I still knew and was certain I knew how to reshelve books. Fell out of my feet a second time. And then a third time. It's like a freaking fairy tale. Like, you will remember this. And I do, see, I do. And what was falling on my foot was not the first edition, but the second edition of Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense, which I highly recommend. If nothing else, it'll do something to your foot. I'll bet. So thanks for letting me speak.
Yeah, well, thanks, Peter, and thanks everyone. We've coming quickly up to the top of the hour, and I so appreciate everyone being here and sharing what you've shared, and I think we've heard a lot in here, and the one thing is Peter's story about looking down in the grass and seeing the little flowers. I think that's a beautiful metaphor for us and for even people that we speak with, because if we spend some time looking within, which is one of the things that Sydney Banks really was saying from the very beginning, is that those little flowers of peace of mind or well-being or wisdom are there. And if we take the time to look, and if we can be with other people, kind of like we've been doing today, part of what I've been trying to do is to invite us all to look a little bit at what's already here, that we can start to see that there are little flowers and other wonderful things already here. And we can know that when we're sharing with other people, that it can be as simple as that it's not really that much on us to like give people something new. It's more like inviting people to look at what they already have. And sometimes that lands and sometimes it doesn't seem to land, but we never know. We never know. And so we can continue to just do that and, wish the best for others, which I think is really important too. So with that, I guess we'll sign off here. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we'll be here again next month. And also, just feel free to reach out to Steph or me, probably Steph, since she's the main contact person, if you have thoughts about what you would like in this group, because we're totally open to things that might be useful for others to explore.
How to start a coaching business. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, sure, Xander.
I was just saying that's what I would like. How to start a coaching business. How to
There you go. Yeah, and we've had things today. How to start a coaching business. Talking to people locally. The different little things that we want to do that we feel like we haven't gotten over. Maybe just even. Well, maybe I'm interested in sharing something, but where do I start? Those sort of things. So we can spend some time on each of those questions. Okay. Well, with that, again, thank you so much. I hope you've all enjoyed being here. It's been wonderful for me, and hopefully see you next time.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Nice
you,
to meet everyone I
everyone.
haven't met, and good to see those I've seen before.
Yeah, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.